What's going on, guys? Welcome back to #AskGSM, episode 506 here today for Wednesday, August 9, 2023. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. A lot has gone on since I last spoke to you guys on this platform a week ago. I obviously flew out for Detroit for SummerSlam weekend, less than 24 hours from doing this video a week ago. Was in Detroit Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday with Mr. Marceau. Had a great weekend, a lot of great interviews, all of which will be here on the channel at some point. I'm still uploading stuff from months ago, so if you notice old content going up, interviews that is, that's why. I mean, it's been published elsewhere in other forms, but just not in video form here on the channel. So if you're probably wondering why the fuck is there an interview from January talking about the Rumble just popping up now, that's why. There's interviews I didn't publish from like 3 or 4 years ago that I just never got around to publishing here on the YouTube channel in full, whether it be audio, video, whatever. And at some point, I will have everything up. I just have no time for it. So anyway, great weekend in Detroit. Big thanks to Mr. Marceau for joining me. We had a great time. Got a lot of work done. Very busy per usual, but always a blast. Came back on Sunday. Monday was normal, and then Tuesday I was in New York City for a couple things. So that was great. It was a lot of fun. It was just the issue was just not really an issue, but just a lot of traveling. My voice is still kind of shot, so if you notice that it's not, I sound tired or something, I mean, that's probably why. Not so much tired as I am just the batteries are a little worn from the last week, and there's still plenty more to look forward to in the rest of the month. No, I am not going to Wembley for All In. I would love to, actually. The show sounds like it's going to be amazing. And my bucket list item still on my wrestling bucket list I have yet to kind of achieve is going to a show in England specifically. I mean, really in Europe, but specifically London, just because that was where I watched my first, I didn't watch it there, but my first full episode of Raw, I believe that I watched, the day that I kind of observed as my wrestling faniversary from April of 2008, took place in England, I think at the O2 if I'm not mistaken, when Regal faced Randy Orton on Raw, blah, blah, blah. So I would love to cover that show, be there in person. I will not be, unfortunately, hopefully at some other point down the road. But yeah, still plenty more to look forward to in the rest of the month. I'm still kind of catching up on things, so bear with me. But speaking of which, let's get right into it here on the channel, breaking down your questions. When we got 2 full pages worth of questions here today, lot to get into, lot to answer, and a lot of great questions at that. So let's not waste any more time. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Let's get right into it. Central Man Network from YouTube, their first question was, funny question here, if the MCU was a wrestling company, who are your top baby faces and top heels? Really good, clever question here. For heels, it would have to be my top 3, and I'm not really getting like unique here. I'm going off the MCU. I mean, if you said like Marvel Comics, I probably couldn't answer. I'm just going off the movies that I've seen, which is all of them. But for heels, Thanos, I feel like Roman Reigns is the current Thanos of WWE. So give Thanos a Roman Reigns-esque run on top as champion. So that would be one. The second one would be Kang. Kang has only really popped up in the MCU. I mean, unfortunately, Jonathan Majors has been proven to be problematic as of late. I don't know if that's official or not, what the call is on his court date, whatever. But anyway, the character itself and his portrayal of that character and what we've seen him in so far from the end of Loki and Quantumania was phenomenal. So Kang is like a smarmy heel. I don't know who he would be equivalent to in today's WWE. I know he's a babyface now, but I always thought Loki was like the Rollins of WWE. I mean, you said top heels. I mean, I'm thinking like 2021 Rollins in like pre-Loki. So like before he turned babyface, so to speak, in Ragnarok. Like that version of Loki from like Thor 1 and 2 in Avengers. I feel like that version of Loki/Rollins would be amazing. For babyfaces, you obviously have to go Captain America, Steve Rogers. I mean, he just screams babyface. The John Cena of your company. Iron Man is amazing. I feel like I always thought Iron Man was equivalent to Punk, which is ironic because Iron Man had the character and the actor, Robert Downey Jr., was always synonymous with drinking, and he had drinking issues and shit, but Punk is straight edge. You know, I feel like he could work as a heel as well. There have been times at the MCU where he's had this great character arc where he was kind of an asshole. I mean, he was always an asshole, but like kind of on the heel side and siding with the government and whatnot and in Civil War. So I don't know if he would be a great top babyface. I mean, he could be. Maybe just a great arc in general. Black Panther was always such a great... He is still such a great, lovable character. Unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman passed away. But in the movies that we've seen him in was always great. So Black Panther... Thor, maybe. I mean, it would have to be more recent Thor, not Thor 1 and 2 Thor. I just thought that Thor was fucking boring. I wasn't a big fan of those movies. In the first Avengers movie, he was fine. I'm thinking more like Ragnarok, Thor, Love and Thunder wasn't an amazing movie, but the Chris Hemsworth portrayal of that character was just great. And is great and whatever, because I don't think he's done, obviously. So probably him. I would say the Guardians, but they don't really feel like top baby faces. You're asking for top baby faces. They'd be a great, like, faction. Can we say Drax? Batista's already in both WWE and MCU. The second question was, do you think Hikaru Shida winning the AEW Women's Championship against Toni Storm was the right call? Yeah, I mean, I was fine with it. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't upset at it. I didn't freak out with excitement. I like Shida. The problem with her winning it really has no reflection on her. It's the booking. It came out of fucking nowhere, which I know is probably the point, to kind of have it be a surprising moment, close out the 200th episode on a big note, an AEW original winning back the AEW Women's Championship. She kind of gets her moment after not being able to have that moment in front of fans. I mean, the first show they had in front of fans, she lost the championship at Double or Nothing 2021. And that wasn't even a lot of people. Her entire reign, her entire year-long reign happened during COVID. And she had a pretty good reign, too. But then after that, they completely forgot about her. She was never on the show. She's done some stuff since then. Like, she had the Serena Deeb feud that went on for like 6 fucking months. And then beyond that, she was on the show a little bit here and there over the last year and a half, but like barely. She has barely been on Dynamite all 2023 long. And then all of a sudden, she just pops up and wins the championship. She had been winning matches on Rampage a little bit, but just not consistently enough on important actual television. But still, the match was great. Shida winning was cool. And now she can have a little bit of a run with it. The Outcast stuff I'm just not a big fan of. I mean, it's gotten better, but it's still not great. So, and Toni Storm is amazing in her role. I think she'll even be even better now that she's not champion than when she was champion. Like that promo that she cut on Collision last week, I thought was excellent. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing where she goes now that she's not champion. But yeah, I mean, was it the right call that she won? Sure, just because I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't really know what you do with Shida as champion. They don't really have a lot of consistently featured women as it is. You gotta put fucking Taya Valkyrie back in that spot. She's gotten 5 title shots this year, hasn't won a single one. I mean, come on. And I love Taya, but I'm just thinking, like, are you just gonna have her in there as a stepping stone, her and Nyla Rose again? I don't give a shit. They gotta start building up actual people for her to face. I've seen people say maybe it's Saraya at the All In show. I like Saraya a lot. I've said this before, but I just don't think her recent run with AEW, she really hasn't wrestled enough to kind of shake off that ring rust. She hasn't had a lot of great matches. I don't know if it's the best call to put her in the ring and have her beat Shida for the championship. I mean, I know they're in England, which is where she's from. It'd be a great moment for Saraya. I just don't know if I want her beating Shida weeks after Shida just won the championship. It really just makes her feel like a placeholder champion. I probably would rather see Ruby Soho as champion over Saraya. Well, again, I like all 3 of them. The Outcast booking has not been great. Like Britt Baker, we've seen her and Shida a bunch. Like Baker was the one who beat her for the championship in the first place. I would be fond of that as like a television match. I don't know if they ever went back to that after Baker beat her for the belt. I don't know if they ever did a rematch on TV. I don't think they did, because Shida was never really on TV after she lost the championship 2 years ago. But anyway, I'm expecting a good run, and hopefully she can make the most of it, and she's not just an afterthought as champion. That was one of the biggest problems with her first reign, as much as I enjoyed it. She wasn't really on the show a whole lot. That was during the pandemic, I know, and she wasn't really on TV a whole lot before winning the belt back, but hopefully they can fix that and really put more emphasis on that women's division. Micah Does It from YouTube, their first question was, what is your favorite Intercontinental Championship match of all time? Great question. I mean, it's hard for me to say any match from before I became a fan. I mean, there's been obviously a lot. That was when the Intercontinental Championship was at its peak, was from before I became a fan in 2008. A lot of great champions, a lot of great matches. I mean, the ladder matches and just everything Bret Hart did with it, Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon. The list goes on and on. But if I have to pick a match from when I was a fan, because again, those are the matches I have the most attachment to personally, 3 come to mind. Gunther and Sheamus from last year's Clash of the Castle was a tremendous match, just an amazing piece of business. I have 3, and I'll rank them here. That would be 3. And I'm not saying that one's weaker than these two. I'm just saying as far as my own personal, preference and whatever, my own attachment to these matches. 2, Miz, Cesaro, Owens, and Zayn in a 4-way for the Intercontinental Championship from Extreme Rules 2016. I was at that show with Mr. Marceau. We had a great time. That match was amazing. And Miz was doing, before Gunter won the belt last year and had just this tremendous run, obviously. The last real great actually, that's not true. Rollins had a great run in 2018. More on that momentarily. Spoiler alert. But Miz was really having a tremendous run with that championship in 2016. I actually wanted him to be the one to end and break the Honky Tonk Man's not end, but break the Honky Tonk Man's record from 30 years ago. And he lost it before he could. He was only champion for 6 months, and I say only. That was a long time back then. Now Gunther's been champion for over a year. It's been 14 months at this point. But he was having an amazing run, was Miz, and this was one of those matches where it really could have gone any way. Zayn, Owens, or Cesaro could have won the championship, and they just had this electric fatal 4-way in Newark at that Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Great show overall. My number one, honestly, this is just so random, but I just remember loving the match. I've gone back and watched it and just really fucking love this match. Seth Rollins and The Miz. Again, it sounds bizarre. They kicked off Backlash 2018. That was just a special run from Rollins. That might be my favorite version of Rollins, was from 2018. 2016 Rollins, when he came back, I also loved. But 2018 Rollins, from start to finish, he was just so fucking over, and he was having amazing matches, and he was really elevating that Intercontinental Championship. And I know he went on to beat Brock for the Universal Championship the following year. They could have done a situation where he won it a lot sooner than that. And they did him and Brock at SummerSlam, and they did a champion versus champion type thing. Brock was not winning the fucking Intercontinental title, but that would have been cool instead of Roman beating Brock for it instead. But anyway, these two had a great match to kick off Backlash. And you might go back and think and watch it oh, that was a great match, but why is it your favorite? I don't know. I just love that run from Rollins. Miz was doing great work. And again, 2016, 2017, early 2018, that was the last time The Miz was I don't want to say amazing, but The Miz is awesome. I just, no pun intended. I just think that was when he was doing his best work, was in that role in that Intercontinental Championship scene from 2016, 2017, 2018. So that would honestly be my favorite. Rollins and Miz from Backlash 2018, as random as that sounds. His next question: if Bianca's injury is legit from SummerSlam, can you see her coming back as a heel? The reason is because she put on a tough match, and the fans turned on her and cheered for Io to cash in on her. So no, she's not hurt. Bianca, I know you sent that in that night. Bianca was playing up the injury. She did a great job of making it seem real. I wasn't sure when it first happened. But when she left and then came back, not that that's always an indication of the injury being fake. Indy Hartwell did that on NXT many months ago, and that was actually a legit injury. I don't think Bianca's actually hurt. I think she's perfectly fine. They did that for a reason, to kind of give her a sympathetic... there's a lot of different directions they can go in from here, is what I'm trying to say, with the WWE Women's Championship. They could do Io and Asuka, which is what I want to say. They can go back to Io and Bianca from Backlash, because again, Bianca won the belt, and then she immediately lost it here after Io cashed in. They could even do Io and Charlotte, which I don't love, because I'm not confident they would make Io look like a strong champion against Charlotte. But there's a lot of different ways they can go with this. Even her and Zelina. Zelina beat her on SmackDown the day prior. They could do Io and Shotzi, because Shotzi's feuding with Bayley, and more so Bayley than Io, but still by association they could do that. There's a lot of different ways they can go with this, which is why I'm looking forward to her run as champion. But no, Bianca's not hurt. Could they tell the story of her turning heel, though, because of the reaction that she got when she got hurt, or quote-unquote got hurt? Yes, I love your reasoning for why she would turn heel. I don't think they would do it right now. This feud with Charlotte, it's already interesting. I might be in the minority. They're kind of doing a Shades of Grey character with both of them. Charlotte's just, as a character, I like Charlotte. She's just not likable for most people, and her character's just not likable. Bianca's more likable, but a heel turn could really refresh her character. Being in chase mode as opposed to being champion really helps, but a heel turn at some point alongside her husband Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins with Bobby Lashley. She doesn't really need to be a part of that group, but it would be cool to see her in there as the female representation, and she's with her husband, and she's a heel as well, dressing like a star. That would be sick. She already dresses like a star, but you know what I mean. So anyway, you can use that as the reason for why she goes heel down the road. maybe not necessarily right now. And the only reason why I say that is if you turn her right now, I assume her and Charlotte is continuing. And if they turn her heel right now, then she's going to be the heel for that feud with Charlotte. And I really do not want babyface Charlotte against Theo Bianca, because babyface Charlotte sucks. That's not even, they might turn Charlotte, which is likely, but I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. So I'd rather not turn Bianca right now, but more of a Shades of Grey intense character is perfectly fine with me. Christopher L. from Facebook's got a couple of questions here, and some really good questions at that. He sent some of these in last week, and I appreciate his patience here. He said, who do you think will be looked back on as someone who changed the business more, CM Punk or Roman Reigns? I feel like I've answered a variation of this question before, and it's a great question because you honestly could answer either one, and I'm not sure if you would necessarily be wrong. I gotta go with Punk, though. Now, listen, I love both guys. I'm biased because Punk's one of my favorites. He's one of my favorites of all time, but I'm not saying him for that reason. Your question was, your question wasn't who will be looked back as having the better career. It would probably still be Punk, as he's had a lot of success across a lot of different promotions, just for longer. Roman's only been on top and just been the guy for the last 10 years. Punk's been around and been a top star for almost 20. So Roman's not even there yet, despite being champion for 3 years, blah, blah, blah. But with CM Punk, you asked who changed the business more. Roman's probably the biggest success story they've had in the last 10 years. Punk was white hot in 2011. But Roman's really helped elevate the company in terms of ratings, merchandise, ticket sales, everything. Everything. Being the face of the company for the last couple of years in this run has really put him on a new level that he wasn't at before. For as big of a star as he was previously before the heel turn, he is, I don't know, 10 times, but he is significantly a bigger star now than he was years ago. And that's just a fact. And it's really helped the business. This Bloodline story, say what you will about it, has really carried the company for the better part of the past couple of years. Everyone has played their roles phenomenally well. He's been booked strong. Again, he always wins with interference. More on that later. But, still, he's one of those characters that he is a must-see aspect of WWE television. That being said, you're asking who has changed the business. Roman has helped business the last year or two since they've been back on the road post-COVID. I don't know if he's necessarily changed the business. Punk did, specifically him and Bryan. You can argue, how much of that pipe bomb promo, how much did it really change, blah, blah, blah. The fact of the matter is this. Before Punk and Bryan got white hot and really broke barriers in 2011 and whatnot, there were not a lot of people on top that looked like them, that wrestled like them, that had the background that they did. I know Shawn Michaels was champion and Bret Hart in the mid-90s and whatnot. It's not like they never had a smaller guy as champion. But after them, though, it was all about the Stone Colds and the Rocks and the Triple H's. The entire fucking 2000s were dominated by the Randy Ortons and the John Cenas and the Batistas and the Takers and so on and so forth. Guys like Punk and Bryan did not get many title runs. Punk was world champion a couple of times in 2008, or he was champion once, but it was such a fucking fluke run that no one gave a shit because they booked him like shit. Bryan was champion in 2011, and it was kind of onward and upward from there. And they're considered two of the greatest of all time. They really ushered in a new era to allow people like Rollins and Owens and Zayn to be hired and for them to have the success that they now have in WWE. Because before Punk and Bryan, WWE was not hiring a lot of those people. They were not hiring a lot of people from Ring of Honor and TNA. And they were not having a lot of success. I think AJ Styles really helped as well. That wasn't your question. But AJ really broke down that barrier of someone who came from TNA, was really successful, and then WWE hired a lot of people from Impact after that. Samoa Joe was the first in 2015. He really broke that barrier. But AJ was the one after that because he bypassed NXT, went right to the main roster, has had an amazing run in the last 7 years. But with Punk and Roman, Punk really did change the business. Again, the product died down after that summer of Punk in 2011. I get that. But still, it was one of those things where he and Bryan just had this different sort of success where people just did not expect him to reach the heights that they did and are still at now in AEW. Again, they're the two biggest stars right now in that company on different shows at this point. I gotta go Punk. The answer might be differently in a couple of years with Roman, but again, he helped WWE profit a lot from the Bloodline stuff, and again, ratings, tickets, merchandise sales, being on the Today Show, doing all these interviews, blah, blah, blah. Punk wasn't really doing a lot of that stuff. I mean, he was a big star, and he still is a big star. He didn't really help the ratings that much, and the ticket sales didn't improve that much when he was champion. I mean, I remember the conversation after he was champion for a little while. People were saying, oh, he's hurting the ratings, it's a flop, and they were doing like 4 times the amount of people for their shows, viewership-wise, then than they are now, because that was 10 years ago. It just worked differently back then. You don't really hear that with Roman, though. I mean, the fan interest might dwindle because people just fucking hate Roman Reigns or the bloodline, and I get it. But it's not as if when Roman's been champion that the product has died down ratings-wise. It's only gotten better. SmackDown has been the A show for them in a lot of ways. And that storyline has been the best storyline, maybe not of all time, but pretty damn close. And maybe it will go down as the greatest of all time when all is said and done. But I got to go Punk, because I feel like Punk did more to change the business than Roman Reigns has. Punk has had success in AEW, Ring of Honor, and WWE. Not that just because you've been everywhere that makes you a bigger star, but Punk really, again, gave AEW one of its hottest stretches in 2021 when he came in. I mean, that Collision show, that first or second Rampage show, did over 1 million viewers. Roman Reigns does viewership for SmackDown as well, obviously, but he helped really send the message that if they could get Punk out of retirement, I mean, him and Bryan really changing the business, again, 10 years after doing it in 2011, AEW is picking up a lot of great talent. They already had Jericho and Moxley and other people, Matt Hardy, people like that. But when Punk and Bryan came in 2011, that really sent the message, fuck, like AEW is getting these guys. They're not just picking up like the second-rate stars like TNA was back in the day. Like TNA had fucking Booker T when he was in the last leg of his career. Kevin Nash, like past his prime. Kurt Angle was a big star. He was a game changer for TNA. But they didn't really have a lot of people like that came over from WWE because at that point, a lot of those people were past their prime. Punk and Bryan, Punk's, not the performer he was 10 years ago, but he's still a big, big star. And Bryan's still one of the greatest in the world today. So when they jumped over, it was a massive deal. And really helped put AEW on the map. Now, Punk almost killed AEW with the fucking backstage brawl shit last year, but he was a big help to them, and even now, being on Collision when he first came in 2 years ago. So I got to go Punk over Roman Reigns, but Roman Reigns is a tremendous, massive star in his own right. And if you answered him, I wouldn't necessarily argue with that, but I have my own reasons beyond just being a fan of his. I just think he had a bigger impact on the business than Roman Reigns has so far. My personal opinion. Has the tag team title reign of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens been a dud? I think dud is a bit of a harsh word to describe it. I don't think so. I mean, again, the discourse in the last couple of weeks has been Owens and Zayn in those titles are not as hot or as important as they were 6 months ago. No fucking shit. Because the Usos were champion for a year and a half, and they were part of the biggest storyline in the company. So no shit they would be in a lesser position now than they were, 6 months ago. I am honestly in the camp of those that have really enjoyed Owens and Zayn's run as tag team champions. They're still amazingly over, despite not being, in the world title picture. As tag team champions, they have main evented Raw a lot in the last couple of months. They have really helped carry Raw along with Rollins and Cody and the Judgment Day. They've all been great. They're all interchangeable in terms of the matches and stuff that we get, and we get a lot of the same matches. But their matches in the last couple of months as champion, the rematch with the Usos on SmackDown in the draft show was excellent. They had a couple of very good matches with Imperium. Even singles matches with Gunther were great. But the Imperium matches, one of them being for the tag team titles against, I think it was Kaiser and Gunther, was phenomenal. That was a great main event on Raw a couple of weeks ago. The Pretty Deadly match was great in London. They had a really good match with those guys. It really helped kind of put them on the map on SmackDown. Unfortunately, one of them got hurt. One of those members of Pretty Deadly, but they're a great team. They had a really good match, and the night after WrestleMania, that Raw with the Street Profits wasn't a championship match, but still a really good match. And they had a great match on Raw in the main event of Raw not too long ago with the Judgment Day a couple of weeks ago. That was a tremendous match as well. So they're consistently killing it on the regular as tag team champions, main eventing Raw, on SmackDown, all over the place, making great, getting great reactions and being a part of important storylines. They haven't defended the championships. I mean, again, they beat Roman Reigns and fucking Solo Sikoa to retain the belts. And I know that was more about the bloodline than it was them, but they still headlined Night of Champions as tag team champions and beat Roman and Solo. Not a lot of people can say they've done that. And that was back in May. So they haven't been on a pay-per-view since then. They were off Money in the Bank just because there wasn't a spot for them. And they were off SummerSlam because Owens has been hurt, and it wasn't a spot for them. Hopefully that changes when they're both good to come back, and Owens might be hurt now with the fucking elbow thing or whatever. But no, I would not call their reign a dud because I still very much enjoy the work that they're doing. They're fucking hilarious. They're doing great work. They're over. I really don't have many complaints. I think people set lofty expectations because they peaked at Mania, but what the fuck else do you expect? They main evented WrestleMania. Of course, it was only ever going to be downhill from there. His next question: do people give Triple H too much credit for his booking of NXT and some of his stuff on the main roster? I loved his work on Black and Gold, but I think it only worked because the show is on a network and on public access. Since it got moved to USA, the show feels less organic and exposed Triple H's booking as basic, which many fans feel is boring and too basic. Is Triple H the end-all, be-all people make him out to be, or is the praise only in comparison to Vince's time as the head of creative? That's a great question. And listen, Triple H does get too much credit sometimes, and we have to call a spade here. I'm the biggest proponent of Triple H being in charge of creative. I really am. Because I love Black and Gold NXT, but you're 1,000% right. If we had an honest sit-down interview with Triple H, and not one of these press conference things, and I'm glad he even does them, and he appears and he answers questions, but a lot of the time he's not very... He answers questions in a very corporate way while also giving you like a legit answer. He's not going to answer this honestly on one of those things. This would have to be a completely honest interview, which he would never answer this honestly, I don't think. Have you had difficulty, Triple H, booking Raw and SmackDown and stuff like that compared to NXT 4 or 5 years ago? He did an amazing job with NXT, but how could he fucking not? Because a lot of those people moved on to the main roster. You had a constant, pot being replenished there with the roster. Yeah, the Garganos and the Coles and the Ciampa stayed, sure. But a lot of those people, Triple H had a great thing going with NXT because he had those people to build around as the faces of that brand, but he had a lot of other people constantly coming in to replenish the pot. They would reach their peak, they would be champion, and then they would move on. Imagine all the people that have been in NXT in the last 10 years, them still being there. That's what we have right now with Raw and SmackDown. There's people that have been on that main roster for so long, and after a certain point, you don't really know what else to do with them because they've reached their, peak as far as character and accomplishments and ring stuff and whatever. He never really had that issue with NXT because, again, he was constantly getting new talent to work with. There were people that would be on takeovers one year, and the following year, none of those people would be on that show because they already moved up to the main roster or aren't in NXT anymore. That's not the same thing that he's got going on with the main roster. There's a lot more moving parts with Raw and SmackDown. No one is debating that. And I was thinking about that recently where I feel like people compare it to the NXT Black and Gold. Again, they had quarterly fucking shows. They had takeovers every couple of months. He did not have monthly pay-per-views. He had a much smaller roster. He had 1 hour of NXT to work with. I mean, I guess he was booking NXT for 2 years when it was on live television from 2019 to 2021. And it paled in comparison to NXT from a couple of years earlier. But again, they were also dealing with COVID. And NXT in 2019, when it first went to USA, was not an issue. People were like, oh, it's going to bomb. I mean, the ratings paled in comparison to Dynamite most weeks, but it was still a great show. NXT before COVID happened was still a excellent show that I thoroughly enjoyed. And they made the most of the 2-hour format. And they made it work. But having 5 hours of television to book otherwise, with 2 hours of SmackDown and 3 hours of Raw, and a lot of other things to consider, from sponsorships and commercials and monthly pay-per-views, a bigger roster, people leaving, people coming in, having to call people up and not really knowing what to do there. It's difficult. So, of course, it pales in comparison to NXT Black and Gold, but it is better than Vince. I'm not going to say Triple H's booking style is amazing just because, it's better than Vince, so it's amazing. No, that's not necessarily true. But honestly, I think you make a great point. Triple H, and Shawn Michaels as well, you can kind of see that they do things very, I say formulaic, but I think wrestling can benefit from being basic. At the same time, though, you can't be too basic with a main roster show. People expect larger-than-life moments, storylines, and whatnot from the WWE main roster. That basic approach works, and I like basic, I do. Not boring. Some people might find it too boring. But have these two people face this week, have it just be simple storytelling. You can't have that with every story on the main roster. It works for NXT when you have a lot of squashes. You can't have squashes every fucking week on Raw. It just becomes boring. NXT back in the day, newsflash, not every week was great television. People kind of wear rose, colored glasses here and think, oh, NXT TV back in 2017 was amazing. No, it really wasn't. I mean, you go back and watch it. I enjoyed the shows and I can go back and watch them. But a lot of it was an hour long, first of all. And second of all, a lot of it was squashes because they would be building to the takeovers. That's what you remember and that's what you enjoy. You don't have that with the main roster. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot more things to worry about. Again, with commercials, which NXT did not fucking have commercials. They were on the network. They didn't have to worry about that shit. They filmed in the same place every single week. They didn't have to worry about dead crowds and attendance numbers and stuff like that. They filmed the same place constantly. And again, people coming in, people leaving, blah, blah, blah. It was a lot easier. They do, both Shawn and Triple H have a very similar way of booking. And it works and it doesn't work. Because it is basic, but you also need a storyline as special as the Bloodline. There weren't a lot of storylines in NXT that really stood out as overly special. I mean, there were a lot of great moments and matches and feuds and whatnot, but not a lot of like, oh my God, this angle was phenomenal, because they didn't really think like that. They just worked they worked on the basic building blocks of what they needed to build towards the takeovers. And the takeovers were tremendous, but again, they didn't have a lot of like storyline developments that were overly phenomenal. Like the DIY breakup and whatnot was great, but that was a cleverly crafted out story. And we have that now with the Bloodline on the main roster, but what else? And I enjoy Raw and SmackDown a lot. I'm one of those people that actually likes the product for the most part right now. But there's not a lot of other storylines and characters that really stand out as special. A lot of those people just feel the same. It's better than Vince's way of booking. Vince's way of booking would be constantly changing things that work, not going the organic way of pushing people that are on their way up like LA Knight and stuff like that. If he's set on something, he will fucking do it. Vince's way of booking just got to a certain point where it was fucking awful. And say what you will about Raw and SmackDown now, I would take current Raw and SmackDown with Triple H mostly in charge. Vince is obviously having an influence, we know that, and signs off on things, gets his 2 cents in there. We know that by Big Bronson Reed and shit like that. But I will take what we have now over like the shanky dancing days of SmackDown from early 2022. What the fuck was that? And not everything that we see on these shows is great, like I said. But holy shit, if you go back and watch a lot of those Raws from the Thunderdome era, pre-Thunderdome, post-Thunderdome, it was fucking awful. And again, Triple H's booking is basic, where we do see a lot of the same matches each week. Not just rematches, but like, oh, we fill this person, instead of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, it's going to be Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins or whatever, I get it, but when the matches deliver and I'm entertained, I'm not really complaining, then I'm not saying just because I'm entertained it works. But I appreciate, it really is preference, because I appreciate their style of booking. But you also do need that spontaneous feel to these shows, that where it's long-term storytelling, but at the same time, the weekly television feels must-see. I'm not talking Crash-style TV. I fucking hate that sort of stuff. But there are ways to make it feel more must-see. And honestly, for all the differences that there are between WWE and AEW, I think a lot of people don't realize Triple H and Tony Khan are a lot more similar than people think. Because like old school NXT and even some of the stuff that Triple H does now is very similar to what Tony Khan does, as far as like, and I do it myself when I do my GM mode and general manager mode. It is very basic, like, all right, we're going to have a tag team match next week with these two teams, so let's do a 6-man this week and stuff like that. It's very point A, point B, blah, 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 blah. Expected, formulaic, but predictable isn't always a bad thing. They're both very similar in that sense. Very, very similar. They have a lot of people, a lot of moving parts to work with. Not everyone's going to get time. Their rosters are amazing, but they're going to do standard matches each week and kind of forget about everyone else for a little while. It has its pros and cons. It's a preference. With WWE, it's more about the fanfare. AEW just does way too much of like certain things, with like the factions and the Crash-style TV stuff, and not giving things time to breathe. WWE gives certain things too much time to breathe, and they go for a fucking half hour when it should be 15 minutes. There's pros and there's cons, but with Triple H, he deserves a lot of credit for turning the ship around. I mean, business has not been this hot for WWE in quite some time. With merchandise, tickets, crowd reactions, and everything. I mean, these pay-per-views this year have been great. Every single pay-per-view, good to great to amazing. Can't really complain overall about the pay-per-views. Triple H is largely responsible for that. And Vince being back, I mean, I'm not saying, we can't just say, oh, everything that great that happens is Triple H is doing, and everything bad that happens is Vince is doing. That's not fair. We don't know how exactly much Vince is involved. I mean, he's involved, and he's had some good ideas over the years. It's mostly bad shit, but it's not everything's terrible. I mean, the Bloodline stuff started with him for the first 2 years, so let's not forget about that. But yeah, we need to cool our horses on Triple H and think more realistically, excuse me. And I think we are. I see a lot of people kind of give him shit for certain things, as they should. We can't just eat up everything he does. Same thing with Tony Khan, and think, all right, just because he does it, we're going to have a plan, it's going to go somewhere. Not necessarily. He has his faults. He's had a lot of faults as the head creative for WWE, as is Tony Khan of the AEW. It's the very same thing to me. So, basic booking, yes, it has its strong suits at times. There's always ways he can improve. There are certainly a lot of ways he can get better. Same thing with AEW. But I will take this WWE over Vince. And it's not just good because it's better than Vince. I think I could show a modern-day Raw or SmackDown to anyone, and they're not going to say, oh, it was good, but at least it was better than Vince. Like, maybe what if they weren't watching a year or two ago? I think they would just objectively say it's a decent to solid or a good, enjoyable show. I know a lot of people that got into it just because they like it, not just because it was better than it was a couple of years ago, because they weren't watching back then. They weren't exposed to it until now. His next question. He's had a lot of great questions from Christopher this week. I'll try not to go too long because we're already, what are we fucking at now? 36 minutes in. Holy shit. We have a lot of questions, so I'll have to go quickly through these next batch. But his last question. Monday's promo with The Miz and LA Knight was fascinating, as Miz brought up some fair criticisms fans have thrown towards Knight, such as being a ripoff of The Rock and Austin, and how he's just nothing but hype, and he's a flavor of the month. He also mentions how the fans will turn on him within the span of a year and a half, or half a year actually. Do you think this might be a fact, or do you think it's not giving LA Knight a chance? I mean, they're not writing him off. I mean, it's not as if they said that and they never gave him a chance to get over. I mean, he is over, and they're now slowly pushing him, which is encouraging to see. That may not have been the case a month ago, but it is now. So I don't think it's not giving LA Knight a chance. It would be one thing to think that and then immediately write him off as, oh, he's terrible, he sucks, he's never going to win me over. I mean, those people are wrong for doing that. You can think that, but then also give him a chance, and maybe he still doesn't win you over, but you got to give the guy a chance if you're not already a fan of his, or you're not really seeing the hype there and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's, I mean, there's obviously some truth to some of that stuff with the Attitude Era, Rock stuff, blah, blah, blah. And he has said this before, I feel like he has elements of all those sort of guys from yesteryear. He's not just directly ripping them off. He's inspired by all of them and kind of merging it with today's, style, modern style, and finding what works for him. And it's gotten him incredibly over, and we don't really see that with a lot of people. Either they have no personality at all, no personality at all, or no charisma, or just no character, or they have a lot of character and the character sucks. I mean, LA Knight has found what worked for him, and he's using it, and it's paid off. So I think he'll be fine. I mean, I'm glad LA Knight, or rather Miz, brought that stuff up in the talk segment. It was great. I mean, it was an amazing talk show segment, talking segment from Monday's Raw. Probably my favorite part of the show on Monday. I'm glad that you referenced that stuff because it's true. They are real criticisms as far as what people think about LA Knight. But it's not bringing it up in a way where, like with Cena and Theory a couple of months ago, where it's like, oh, no one cares about you. It's like, well, that's true, so I'm not really sure why you would say that. Which also, it wasn't entirely true, because Theory was getting good reactions at that point. He's not now, because they failed to follow up on that Cena one for Mania. That was just a fucking waste of time. But, he's already over, so they're acknowledging that stuff, and it's not making people think of him in a certain way, like, oh, you know what, you're right, he is kind of like The Rock, you know what, fuck him, actually, he's terrible. Like, I don't really see a lot of that happening. I think if they can acknowledge that stuff, but also prove them wrong, and continue to have him be over going forward, and it's not just a short-term thing, then that's fine. That's really the key there. You can say that sort of stuff, as long as you prove, yeah, he's not the flavor of the month. That's really the key. I don't think he will be. It looks like they kind of recognize how over he is. He was at the Mets game last night hosting. He did an amazing job. He's getting great reactions. Face of Slim Jim. I mean, come on. How do you not push the guy? If he's even benefiting their bottom dollar here and getting them more money with merchandise sales and stuff like that, how do you not push the guy after that? And I'm glad to see that they're doing that. And it's not just, oh, they like him and he's getting good reactions, but they're not buying his merch or whatever. No, they are. They definitely are. So WWE notices that, which is great. And I think he will be, I think he'll just be fine. I think he'll be just fine going forward. And I can't confirm that. I mean, WWE, they're very hit or miss with, like, capitalizing on stuff. Maybe he loses his next 5 matches and he's just at a certain level and they want to knock him down a couple pegs. I always thought that was dumb, where WWE would knock someone down back to earth and then build them back up again in their own image. I always thought that was incredibly fucking dumb. That was always very stupid. If you have someone that's hot, you fucking run with it. If it makes sense to run with it and they're good, Why not run with it? He's great, so run with it. And it looks like they finally are. No L from Facebook. After this Miz and LA Knight story is over, on that same note actually, do you see them becoming a tag team? God, I fucking hope not. I mean, that could definitely be a possibility. Miz has had a million partners, and none of them are any better off than they were before teaming with The Miz. That's not necessarily The Miz's fault, but every single person they put with The Miz, every fucking person, was just a stepping stone for The Miz, and Miz turned out almost all of them. Sandow, not with the company. Alex Riley benefited for a little while, no longer with the company. R-Truth was always going to be a comedy character. They had a great thing going, turned on him. Shane McMahon, they were fucking tag team champions. Actually, Miz was worse off after that one, and Shane was pushed, but I mean, he was the wrong person to push. He was just terrible. Miz was worse off after that one. There's been a lot. There's been so many people he's teamed with. Ciampa isn't really doing much right now. I mean, it gave him some consistent TV time, I guess, when they were teaming last year, but still, just putting The Miz with anyone at this point is just a fucking death sentence. I would not do that. So I'm hoping this LA Knight story does not culminate with them feuding, or rather with teaming. Feuding, fine. Teaming, no. LA Knight is much bigger than a fucking tag team with The Miz. He should not be contending for the tag team titles. It is one thing to do like a Cole MJF type thing where it catches fire, cool, run with it. And maybe they would have that sort of chemistry. But what would that entail exactly? LA Knight going heel? No. Miz going babyface? Maybe. Or just have their current characters and have them team up as reluctant partners? Again, he's bigger than that. Maybe to start out, maybe. But at this point, he's so over. And he's already 40, 41 years old. They don't have that much time left with the guy. Put him in the mid-card title scene, in the main event scene. That's what he's ready for, not this tag team crap. So that would have been entertaining a year ago. At this point, I'm kind of over that, beyond that. Miz as a character is just fucking awful at this point. Again, I like the segment on Raw this week, but his booking has just been atrocious. He has just like changed the channel material for me. Putting LA Knight with him really just honestly benefits Miz more than it does LA Knight. So the answer to that is no. Their second question, since Roman Reigns is injured, should he lose the championship soon, or will WWE host another tournament like always? Neither. I don't think he's that hurt to where they have to take the championship off of him. I mean, if the guy was hurt for a fucking year, then maybe. Even then, they would probably find a way to extend it. There's no way they end a 1,000-day-long reign via vacating, unless the guy died or something. No way. That would have been dumb. Apparently, he did get hurt. I mean, I think Sean Ross Sapp reported the other day that however hurt he is, however hurt Roman Reigns is, that it's not going to affect any of his upcoming appearances. I think he still is on SmackDown this week. I would hope so, because they have to follow up on what we saw at SummerSlam, and then he'll probably disappear again. I don't think he's wrestling again until at least November or January anyway. So whatever injury he has, I think he'll be fine by that point. So I don't think they're going to have to vacate the championship. I don't think they're going to have him get beat for it or do a tournament to crown a new champion. That would be terrible. Imagine keeping the belt on Roman for 3 months, or 3 years rather, and then he has to vacate it. That would have been fucking terrible. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter machine. Check him out on YouTube as well. Real Honesty with John Ritland does great work. His first question was, so the end of SummerSlam had some people up in arms, to say the least. I'll only ask this. Given the track record of brother versus brother feuds, do you think Jay versus Jimmy will actually work? Honestly, I do. My problem is I don't know if you can stretch this out until WrestleMania. Now, like I've said this before, we're like, oh, you can't stretch this out, and then they do. But here's the thing. For example, they kicked off Roman and Brock. I mean, that being a Mania in 2022 was just, no one wanted to see that, but they kicked off that feud at SummerSlam. They were able to drag that out through Mania. But that's because they had this great story, and Brock's not a full-time guy. He's not on the show every week. Roman was able to defend against Finn Balor and do other stuff. Seth Rollins, he was busy with Big E at Survivor Series. They didn't really have to worry about them being on the same show every week. It was just an occasionally furthered feud that ended up being a great feud, actually, with Rey and Dominic. They kicked off that feud in early of September of 2023 or 2022 with Clash of the Castle. And they blew that off in Mania. How did they do that? By putting Rey on SmackDown and separating them for a number of months. They were on the same show for a good month, and then Rey moved to SmackDown in October. And they were kept separate until like February or March. With Jimmy and Jay, if they're going to be on the same show, unless you're moving one of them to Raw, not like the brand split means anything anyway, But if they're going to be on the same show, there is no fucking way they are, unless they write one of them off until January, there is no way they're going to be able to extend this until WrestleMania. That would be cool to have a brother versus brother match at Mania, but then that way, just do the turn later on, closer to Mania, not do it on Saturday. But the problem is that WWE, I think, they want to keep this going till Mania. The issue with this feud is that I don't think that they can, drag this out until then, because WWE's whole idea, I think, is that with Roman Reigns being gone, this is the feud that's going to carry the blue brand in the meantime. Will that actually work? I don't know. I don't know if Jimmy and Jay can carry SmackDown on their own. I honestly don't have enough. I love both guys. They're tremendous. I don't think a singles feud between Jimmy and Jay, even for as great as and as over as they are, can legitimately carry SmackDown in the absence of Roman Reigns for the next 3 to 5 months. I just don't. Can they hold off on a singles match between them until Mania? No, I don't think so. Again, until they write one of them off, unless they write one of them off or move one of them to Raw or whatever, I don't think they can. I feel like they're going to have to do it soon. Because again, this is the feud that WWE will do when Roman Reigns is gone. And then when Roman comes back, maybe they'll do him in solo or a 4-way or whatever, and that's great. But in the meantime, we're getting Jimmy and Jay. And then how do you do a feud between the two if they're not, if they're not having matches against each other? That just doesn't make sense. I think the feud will work as a main event feud with nothing on the line. I don't know about that. Upper mid card, sure. Main event feud carrying SmackDown week to week. Would love to be proven wrong. I'm not optimistic though. His second question. Since Gunther is now within 30 days of the Intercontinental Championship record, he's going to break it, right? I mean, listen, I hope so. It would be a very WWE thing to just break it before, to end his run before he can break the record. More often than not, sure, if they have a record and they're so close, WWE does have that person break it, whether it be the Usos or Bianca or the New Day back in the day. Even if it meant them losing the championship right after they, broke the record, they lost the title soon after. Even Nikki Bella, like she broke AJ Lee's record back in 2015. She lost the title like 6 days later. Like WWE likes to refresh their record books, especially lately. And the Honky Tonk Man's been champion for God knows how long at this point. And they probably don't. I mean, if they can say that Gunther is the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time, why wouldn't you take that? Who gives a shit about the Honky Tonk Man? I mean, he can get over it. I wouldn't have said keep the belt on Gunther just to break the record 6 months ago. It really should have been Sheamus beating Gunther for that belt at Mania. It really should have been. But since we're past that point, it would be dumb. We've come this far to have him lose now. So I feel like he will break it. I actually predicted Drew to win at SummerSlam. I did. And then he lost. So he could win it at Payback mere days before he breaks the record, but that would probably turn Drew heel to me because that'd be pretty stupid for WWE to do. Non-wrestling related question from John, but his question was, given the recent string of DC flops at the box office, do you see Blue Beetle succeeding? I don't. I mean, it looks decent enough, but we really don't know a lot about the character. And all the other movies they've done were big movies. The Flash, that movie was supposed to be a massive multiverse crossover. And I enjoyed the movie, actually. I thought it was entertaining. But the issue was that it did not do well financially. There were a lot of issues with that movie, but, Ezra Miller and blah, blah, blah. But it just didn't do well. So if that didn't do well, I would be stunned. I would be shocked if Blue Beetle did remotely as, even close to what that did. I mean, Shazam 2 they had, that didn't do very well, and that has a bigger IP and has more fanfare than fucking Blue Beetle. So, especially in the midst of the strike and people not really talking about movies right now, I don't see Blue Beetle doing well. I probably will watch it. I've watched the majority of the DC movies in the last couple of years. I'll probably watch it. I don't expect that to do well, unfortunately, even if it does end up being a good movie. At Iwagu91, we're going now onto the second page of questions, so I will have to spend a little less time on these because I rambled for so long earlier. At Iwagu91, first off, today/Wednesday is me and Alexa Bliss's birthday. Oh, happy birthday at Iwagu91. Oh, that's awesome. He says, your thoughts on Ludwig Kaiser? I think Kaiser's great. I don't really see Kaiser as a mid-card Intercontinental Champion on his own, but I'm glad they're giving him some wins recently on Raw. He's playing an important part of the Imperium story. I'd rather see Vinci get that spotlight because I think Vinci's better in the ring than Kaiser is. Kaiser's kind of a better character. He could talk better. He just has a better presence about him. Vinci's better in the ring. That's kind of why they work so well as a team. But anyway, Kaiser's great, and I'm glad they're kind of pushing him recently on Raw. It's about time because they lose a lot, do Imperium as a group, and tag teams and stuff, Gunther really gets the great spotlight. They're just kind of lackeys, but they are both good in their own right, and I'm glad he's winning matches recently. Do you think that Big E will return to the ring? I do. Whether it be when he's cleared or he has to retire first and then come back down the road. Either way, I do think he will wrestle again. I'm not going to guarantee that, say, oh, you're dumb for thinking he would retire. No, listen, he said recently over the weekend at SummerSlam weekend in Detroit that his doctors have told him he probably shouldn't wrestle again. That neck injury was pretty fucking serious. He's been out for over a year now, almost a year and a half. That's a long time. People are not out injured for this long without saying, yeah, I'm retired. Some people just find out immediately and they retire. He's really holding out hope that he won't have to. But it might be a Page thing where he retires and then he comes back in a couple of years. I do think we have not seen the last of Big E in the ring. Have we seen the last of Big E as an active performer on the weekly roster? Yeah, probably, and probably for the better. If it comes at the risk of his health and comfortability and his way of living, then yeah, no, absolutely, he should not be back in the ring. That would be dumb. Do I think we'll see another New Day 6-man or another singles match from Big E down the road? I do. I just can't say when, because the injury is so serious and he could have died. And I think the recovery of his neck has not been what they thought it would be. So it might be a very long time, but I do think we will see another Big E match. My prediction is that we will see him return to the ring at some point. Either when, again, he's cleared or he has to retire first and then wrestle again down the road. A la, Saraya and Edge and people like that who wrestled. Edge wrestled almost a fucking decade later after being retired. Saraya was 4 or 5 years. So it might take some time, but I do think we will see him in the ring again down the road. His third question, when do you think Gunther versus Chad Gable for the former's Intercontinental Championship will take place? Probably on Raw. I mean, they haven't really begun building to Payback yet, so, I mean, Payback would be great. They'll be in Pittsburgh, maybe you can bring in Kurt Angle, have him play Raw, blah, blah, blah. That would be cool. I think they'll probably just end up doing it on Raw. I love Gable and Gunther as a match. I'm glad Gable won on Raw. You don't need Gunther to be on the pay-per-view. Give that spot to someone else. Unless Gable's winning, which I don't think he is. But it would be cool if they saved it, honestly, until after he broke the record and then Gable was the one to take the belt from him. That would be amazing. But I'm not expecting it. But I think we'll probably see it on Raw in the next couple of weeks. That's my prediction. Bill Meister 88, their first question was, do you think the upcoming Jimmy versus Jay feud ultimately leads to Rikishi returning now to take on the Bloodline storyline, or rather to take the Bloodline storyline to the next stage, or do you see a different way the story goes? The Rikishi thing is weird. I thought we would have seen Rikishi on TV by now. They talk about the elders and the NOI family all this entire time. They talk about it so much. You think we would have seen Rikishi on the show by now because the Usos are in such a prominent position on the show. It might make more sense, though, to save him for this feud because his sons are feuding and he doesn't want to see that. Maybe Jimmy attacks his own father or whatever and attacks Rikishi, leaves him laying, Jay makes the save, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I think we will see Rikishi at some point. I don't think they're against that. I was just surprised we haven't seen him sooner. But it would make perfect sense. I'm not banking on it. If I had to predict if we will, yeah, I think we will at some point. I think if you really want to stretch this out, you're going to have to get creative, and bringing in Rikishi just makes sense. So hopefully they do that at some point. Their second question, what went wrong with the Ronda-Shayna match creatively? It killed the crowd, and the match was so clunky. What should creative have done differently? Not do an MMA rules match, I'll tell you that much. Listen, if they had a standard singles match, I don't know how much better it would have been. I still feel like the crowd would not have given a fuck. But I think giving them a cage would have made it a little bit more interesting. I don't know if they were ever going to have great chemistry as wrestling opponents. Honestly, I like the MMA rules match itself. I thought it was a very well-worked match. The problem is that wrestling fans are not there to watch an MMA submission specialist match. If they're beating the shit out of each other, then maybe. They would just go off and watch UFC. A lot of those WWE fans, they reckon, are not UFC fans. There is an overlap. I don't know how big it is. Same thing with UFC and WWE. I think there's some UFC fans that are WWE fans, but if they wanted to watch fake fighting with storytelling, they would fucking watch WWE and not UFC. So, anyway, yeah, I think the match just failed because, first of all, Shayna was never really established as the babyface. People just don't like Ronda. But even still, people did not rally behind Shayna during the match. People just sat on their hands. They didn't really know how to react. Second of all, there wasn't really anything overly interesting about the match. You see a lot of great technical fights in the UFC, but there are also a lot of them they're fucking boring because it's just submissions and they're not really hitting each other. That's kind of what we saw with Ronda and Shayna. They were hard hitting in there and that was great. But we're not really used to MMA rules type stuff. I do appreciate that they tried something different, but I was hoping it would be a fight pit because people know the fight pit. You can look forward to the cage. They could throw each other into the cage. That would have been, to me, more interesting or entertaining than, doing what they did instead. And then Bill's last question here. It was fantastic to see that LA Knight won the Battle Royal on SummerSlam, but where does it lead him to next? There was no prize for winning, and a spot with The Miz feels like a step backwards again. No offense to Miz. Offense to Miz. The Miz himself, it's not the problem, but his booking is awful. Anyway, he says, do you agree, and what did you think of their promo war on Monday night? Like I said earlier, I loved it, and it's not really a step backward. Sure, he gets this amazing reaction to the pay-per-view, winning a Battle Royal that doesn't really mean anything aside from basically becoming the spokesperson of Slim Jim, which is great. But with Knight, though, I just feel like he wasn't really in the midst of a storyline anyway, so I would typically agree he's so over. How do you waste him on the fucking Miz? But Miz is established. He can beat Miz. They can have a couple good matches, more promo battles that were as great as what we got on Monday, hopefully. And hopefully didn't just peak on Monday. But he wasn't really doing anything previously. Yeah, he's a SmackDown superstar feuding with a Raw star. That's just stupid. But what else would he be doing on SmackDown? Feuding with Grayson Waller? Waller's not established yet. I would love to see that at some point, but they're just not ready for that yet. SmackDown doesn't have a lot of great heels. They have a lot of great baby faces, but not a lot of great heels. And he's not feuding with Roman anytime soon. Theory would be great, but the problem with Theory is that he's busy with Santos right now. So Knight and Miz, honestly, perfectly fine by me. No complaints here. If it goes on for 6 months, we have an issue. And the Miz is winning a majority of those matches, then we have an issue. It cannot be a long feud. It should be a means to an end with LA Knight to keep him busy, give him a couple more credible wins, and then have him move on. But yeah, I like the idea of the feud, and I love that segment from Monday. That was, like I said earlier, my favorite part of the show. At Kyle Rochelle 19, their first question was, how do you feel about Raquel and Rhea's brawl on Monday? It was a brawl. It was fine. They're doing what they can to kind of further that feud between Rhea and Raquel and kind of have people rallying behind Raquel. She's just not interesting as a character. That's what we kind of have to hear from her more on the stick, and turning her heel I think would help, but they're just not ready for that right now. The brawl was fine. Having Candice in there hopefully leads to Candice and Rhea soon on Raw, maybe Indy and Rhea as well. I would not complain about that, but it was what it was on Monday night. Their second question, now that Io Sky is champion, who will be her first feud? Is it Bayley? Oh, definitely not. I would have said that maybe a month ago when she won the briefcase, but they're still clearly friends for now, and they're saving that split for down the road. So no, it's not going to be Bayley. Bayley's not going to pull an Evolution Randy Orton Triple H betrayal on her and beat the shit out of her on Friday. Bayley's busy with Shotzi anyway. Like I said earlier, you could have her face Zelina on SmackDown. Zelina's now 2-0 against Io in recent months on SmackDown, so you could do that match and have it be a quick SmackDown title match, and then she wins, retains the title. I think her and Asuka would make sense as being next. It could be Bianca and Io, but then where does that leave Charlotte and Bianca, or Charlotte and Asuka? So I think Asuka's going to move on, or Io's going to move on to Asuka, and then Charlotte and Bianca will have their own feud on SmackDown, non-championship, which I like a lot. So that's what I'm expecting. What do you think of Shinsuke's heel turn? Are you looking forward to a Rollins and Nakamura feud? I think Shinsuke is just a natural babyface, but he's been around for so long that they want to try something different. Fine. To me, he's just a natural. He's just a natural fan favorite. People fucking love Shinsuke. He'll never be the guy again. Like the closest they came to that was 2018. He wouldn't have been like a 5-time WWE champion, but they could have easily put the belt on him at that point. They just didn't. Rollins and Nakamura. The issue that I have with it is that we've seen it so often. We've seen a lot of matches between them over the years. They had a match at Survivor Series 2018. They had a match at Fastlane in 2021. Yeah, the matches have been spread out. They really haven't had a full-fledged feud. But Nakamura's been around forever. He's just not a threat. He just really isn't. Balor, they ended up building him up to be a threat. Balor's a bigger threat than fucking Nakamura is, who has not done shit in years. So, I'm looking forward to it, though. I think it's a fresher feud. I'd rather see that than Rollins and Balor again for the third or fifth time or whatever. It's something new. They really got to convince people that Nakamura has a shot. How well of a job they can do that, I don't know. But it's something different, and it prolongs Rollins and Rhodes, and that's fine by me. Maybe they can do a triple threat with Rollins, Rhodes, and Nakamura. I tend to believe Rhodes will probably be busy with Judgment Day for right now. I feel like the next pay-per-view, it's going to be Balor and Rhodes. Rhodes wins. Balor goes ballistic on Priest, who cost him the win. Or cue the split with Judgment Day, or at least Damian breaking off on his own, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I'm expecting. At Johnny NBA from Twitter, has the build to All In been lackluster to you? For me, it has. For any other pay-per-view, it's been okay for 80,000 in the building. I expected them to go all in, pun intended. Yeah, it's been disappointing, but listen, they're at least now building a card. I will say that. Thank fucking God. It took them a while, but we have MJF and Cole for the AEW World Championship. We got FTR and the Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team titles. And we've got Joe and Punk, most likely. Now, those last two are not confirmed, but it's looking pretty likely. And with those matches, they come completely out of nowhere. Joe and Punk had a match a couple of weeks ago. Punk's busy with Starks right now, so that's why I say it's random. The FTR and Bucks match comes completely out of nowhere. I mean, the match sells itself, but it would have been nice if the match made more sense as far as how it came about, as opposed to FTR just saying, hey, we want you at Wembley. Okay, whatever. They need to announce more matches, and they need to do so soon, so they're not just waiting until the week of, which they constantly fucking do. I mean, this company is always announcing matches the week of the pay-per-view. It's just so annoying, and it doesn't help. I know they already sold 80,000 tickets. That's great, and it is an amazing achievement. But for people buying the show, spending $50 for it, the same people you want to spend $50, then following week for All Out, you would think they would announce more of a card. So hopefully they do. The build has been lackluster. They really do need to focus on it these next couple of weeks and not just, Dynamite 200. Like, cool. Like, tell me what the card is for fucking All In and have it be matches that make sense and not just a bunch of multi-man matches that just, it's going to be a great match, but okay, why should I care? That's my question. At noob_n_TV, their question was, first question. First thing first, yesterday was my birthday. Oh, happy birthday. Another birthday. We got 2 birthdays here. I don't know if he meant Monday or Tuesday, but happy birthday to at noob_n_co.tv. And his question was, also your thoughts on Lufisto's comments in the AEW women's division, and which indie wrestlers do you not want signed to AEW? I don't know about that second part, but for the Lufisto comments thing, I read and heard most of them. I mean, I'm sure there is some truth to what she's saying. I'm sure there's some exaggeration there as well. Like the Ruby Soho costing her a job thing. Maybe. I don't really know much about that at all. It was just a fucking mess. I'm glad someone said something about the booking of the women and that Tony Khan does not care about the women's division. If anything else, I'm glad she said that because it's true. Tony Khan does not prioritize the women's division. They main evented Dynamite last week. Who cares? They've done that before. It was just because they were doing other stuff earlier in the show. It's not because he genuinely sees the women as main event attractions every week. He doesn't. He definitely does not. But anyway, listen, I think there was some semblance of truth to her comments, but she's not going to be able to work there ever again, which I'm not sure she was looking for recently anyway. And all the defensive talk from the women that work there, like, great. I'm sure it is a community, and that's great. Y'all love each other, or at least mostly. But you need to recognize that your fucking boss does not care about that division or prioritize it. So keep that in mind when you start spewing this bullshit about, the women's division is great here. Okay, well, why don't we see Afia? That's my question. Your second question, your thoughts on Jimmy Uso's shocking betrayal at SummerSlam. Do you think he'll side with Roman Reigns, or is he just jealous of Jay because he's next in line as the tribal chief? I think it's the latter. I don't think he'll join up with Roman. I think they're swerving people by saying, he's going to acknowledge Roman Reigns on Friday. To put him back with Roman would be ridiculous. That would be so fucking dumb. Honestly, I thought the betrayal itself was stupid, just because I don't really think it makes sense. What you said, he's jealous of Jay because he's next in line for the tribal chief. I mean, I guess. I mean, you could try to spin it a couple different ways and do the mental gymnastics there. But, he's still, this is my question. You would rather have your abusive cousin be champion over your fucking brother. I'm not saying it's unrealistic that he'd be jealous of Jay. I get that. But he's willing to cost Jay the title because he hates Jay that much. He doesn't hate Roman more. I mean, I thought he hated Roman because he was so abusive and whatnot to his brother. I mean, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. I just thought that was really dumb. It's a way for them to extend the program while Roman Reigns is not there. That is what is going on here. The betrayal itself, a good surprise. I just want Cody to take the fucking belt. I'm kind of just beyond this stuff at this point. And Roman won't show up again for another couple months. I mean, come on. At Nick the Hulk 93, his first question was, why is Rhea Ripley being treated like a ringside girl? No fights, no beef with anyone. How is she a big superstar with no action? I actually wanted to ask, too, do you think they will ever have her fight a male, considering she's always in the middle of that action? I do, on that second part. I do think at some point we will I mean, she actually did. She fought Akira Tozawa last year on Raw back in December. I think she can have a competitive match with, honestly, most males on that roster. It would not be unrealistic. I think they will get that at some point. We will get that. The Tozawa match is one thing. Like, having her face Rollins is another, but I do think it would be cool if we got that at some point. I'm not banking on it, but I do think it's possible. The first part of your question, Rhea is just so over because she's just such a great character, but she really should be wrestling more. She is kind of a ringside girl right now for Dominic and the rest of the Judgment Day. She doesn't wrestle a whole ton. There is something to be said for making her an attraction, but she's a fucking champion. She should be defending the championship a lot more than she is. They're furthering the feud of the Raquel, which is fine. They're doing that whole thing right now. That's good. But she hasn't defended the championship on pay-per-view since Night of Champions. That's not good. I mean, like with Owens and Zayn, at least they were hurt. Rhea's not hurt. She's just not being booked for these shows. I mean, her and Raquel could have happened at SummerSlam, but they're giving it more time to build up. That's fine, but I mean, they should have started the building up a lot sooner than they did. She's had a couple good matches as champion. I'm not denying that. But she really should be more of a focus. She's all over the shows, but her championship is kind of an afterthought, and it's not really the main focus when it should be as part of the Rhea Ripley presentation itself. Nick's second question here, or next question rather, from Nick. Nick's next question. Next year's WrestleMania, do you think The Rock will come back, along with the Usos and Roman's family, whom were in the WWF, and show up as the elders and end the family turmoil? Listen, I thought that would have been great for Mania 39. They didn't do that. I'm kind of over The Rock showing up at this point. I want to see it. I've said, it would have been cool. Maybe we'll see it this week. I'm over it in terms of I don't think it's going to happen. I feel like if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. They're not waiting fucking 10 years to do Rock and Roman. Rock, I doubt, can wrestle anyway. I don't see that happening. So it would be amazing. Trust me. I think that'd be great. Finish the story by having the elders kind of turn on Roman and The Rock included and Rikishi and everyone else. That would be sick. And then Roman, whatever, the bloodline's over. That would be phenomenal. I just don't think we're getting The Rock back. The Rock coming back at SummerSlam this year would have been cool, planting the seeds for a future match. He wasn't there, didn't even make an appearance. He does not give a fuck. Even when there's no movies going on, he's still not showing up. He doesn't care. At E13A from Twitter, last couple of questions here. How do you feel about the frequent interference in Roman Reigns' matches? Did you notice that WWE backtracked in one of the rules for the tribal combat being no interference? Yeah, it said that. I saw like the screenshot from WWE.com on Google. I mean, did the actual article ever say that, or did it just say that on Google? I don't know. Maybe it was a quick typo and they quickly changed it. I don't know if it was always saying that going into the match. I have no idea. But anyway, there is constant interference. It's fucking old. I know that's the Roman Reigns character, but it only works to a certain point. When it happens all the fucking time, I mean, it's just tiresome. I know the story they're telling that Roman can't win on his own. He should be able to. I mean, the guy's dominant. So it's just kind of stupid that he can and even beat other people like Finn Balor. Like they're protected in defeat. No, they just look like an idiot for falling victim to the interference like every other person in the last 3 years. And the tribal combat stipulation was dumb. It was a basic no DQ match, and Solo got involved anyway. What the fuck did Jay expect to happen? Did he think Solo would not get involved? I mean, give me a break. Last question from at E13A. His question was, have you heard about Roman Reigns' injury? I have, because I discussed it earlier. I don't think it's that serious to where he's going to have to vacate the championship. And even if he's out for a couple of months, it doesn't matter, because he's probably not wrestling again until November at the earliest anyway. I don't think he's wrestling in September. I don't think he's wrestling in October. He'll probably be on their next Saudi show at some point. At the very least, he'll be at the Rumble. And that's it. We might not see another Roman defense for another 4 or 5 fucking months, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous, but it just is what it is at this point. So whatever he has injured, I don't think it's that big of a deal. We just know that he's hurt. We don't know if he's like, he broke his arm or like whatever. Like, we don't even know the extent of the injury. And if Fightful is to be believed, and they're saying that Roman won't miss any of his schedule, what scheduled appearances does he have? He's not being promoted for Payback or Fastlane or Survivor Series. So what fucking shows are we even talking about here as far as what he's on and what he's not on? But anyway, they're saying that he won't schedule or he won't miss any scheduled appearances, meaning it can't be that serious, so it doesn't really matter, and he's not going to have to vacate the championship, which, like I said earlier, would be disastrous. But that was it, guys, for episode 506 for Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. Thank you so much, as always, for checking out the show. I appreciate it. A lot of questions. We went an hour 10. I could have gone 90 minutes if I spent more time on some of these questions, but I do got to get out of here soon. Thank you so much for all the questions. A lot of great questions this week. I don't really know which one I'm going to use as the headline. You'll know before I do talking right now, because you'll see the headline and the thumbnail, and you'll know, oh, he went with that one. But There are a lot of different questions I can use because there were a lot of great questions. I can't do the show without you guys, so thank you so much. Speaking of which, if you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on the Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comments section of this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. All right, folks, have an awesome one. I got to go rest and catch up on some shit. I'm still catching up here after a week away, but I'm not nearly as backed up as I would be from like Mania and other pay-per-views I've been to. So that's the plus. I kind of paced myself fairly well, got a lot of work done when I was away, and I'm not too behind. Tired a little bit, but not too behind, which is great. Anyway, guys, have an awesome one. I'm GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.